I'm
Hello
done.
and welcome to Mission Possible, the podcast that celebrates and highlights the stories of immigrant entrepreneurs in Australia. My name is Mr. G, and today I'm with a very interesting guest. His name is Daniel Erasmus, and he's the founder and CEO of Insight Actuaries, a firm that helps organizations acquire knowledge necessary to understand the big picture and make the right decisions for them and their people. Daniel, welcome to the program. It's a pleasure to have you here with us. Thank you for your time. I know you're super busy. And I would like to ask you a little bit more about yourself. What's your story here? What brought you to Australia and to Newcastle?
Oh, thanks, Felipe. Thank you also for the opportunity. Love looking forward to the chat today. So I think what lured us to Australia was a combination of things. So obviously you can hear from the accents. I'm originally from South Africa. And we were looking for a combination of a bit of adventure, a bit of a place where we felt is the right place to raise our two girls. And, we looked at a couple of places internationally and we kept being drawn back to Australia. It's funny because we were actually on holiday here in 2013 that was work related, but we just had an opportunity to explore the country a bit. And both my wife and I felt that the level of control was a bit too much. Like we wouldn't want to ever, live in a place where there were so many rules and restrictions. And now, as a citizen, as someone that's been here for almost 5 years now, we actually love the fact that that everybody kind of does the right thing for the most part. It's the same reason your kids can play in the street. It really is a great place to live. So it was a combination of lots of stuff. Newcastle's an interesting experience. So I love the water. I love swimming specifically. And when we came to Australia, we incorrectly thought we have to be in Sydney to start the new business. And then one of the first clients we got were based in Newcastle. And when I came up for some of those first meetings, I said to my wife, "That's amazing. This is just like where we are from in South Africa, beach lifestyle." So by that stage, the kids had already started settling into school in Sydney. So I couldn't convince my wife and the kids to jump right away. But then we had an opportunity about 3 years later where the timing was just right and we moved up and I really haven't looked back since.
Yeah, it's amazing. That resonates very much with me, man. Because at the beginning, I'm from South America, and actually, I have friends from
Okay.
South Africa, and we have some certain similarities between South America and South Africa in certain aspects.
Yeah.
So I felt that a lot of regulations here, but then you get used to it, and you like it. After a few
Yeah,
years. You're like, oh, that's why it works here, because people respect the
that's
rules.
right. That's right. I mean, I'd be interesting to. So you're right. Like, there's going to be lots of similarities there. But what some of the things that made you push the envelope in South Africa, and I'm sure here's the same. The rules aren't enforced, so it's always a perspective that if you're getting caught, that someone else isn't. We're here because the rules are the same for everybody. It's much, you find, oh, okay, there's, as you say, there's a good reason for it. When did you guys move across, Felipe?
We moved here to Newcastle in 2012, but I've been in Australia since 2003. I came as a student.
Ah,
And my intention was to
okay.
go back to Chile, right? But I met my wife in Melbourne, and we decided to move up to Newcastle because I love the water as well, man. I love the water. I
Oh,
love the
that's
lake
awesome.
where we
And
live.
is she Australian or is your wife also
She's
Chilean?
Australian. She's Australian.
Ah, okay, that's awesome.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So yeah, no, it was a great experience, and it's funny because I have, as I mentioned before, friends from South Africa, and talking, I was like, oh man, this is so similar. The stories and
Yeah.
the backgrounds between South Africa and South America. That the motivations are similar as well when to move. For family, it's I really decided to stay here because of my kids.
And how old are your kids, Felipe? Are they girls,
My
boys?
kids are 11 and 9.
Ah, okay, so very similar. We are
Two boys.
13 and 10. Okay, we've got two girls. Okay. Oh no, that's
Yeah,
awesome. It's a great place. Like for kids, like you're not gonna like it's amazing. It is absolutely
yeah,
incredible.
yeah, yeah. So, Daniel, tell me a little bit more. What's the role of an actuary, and what kind of work do you usually do?
Yeah, so I have to confess I'm a non-traditional actuary. So
Yeah,
traditionally, especially in the Australian environment, an actuarial uh, role is a statutory role. So that means you need to report into regulators and government. And the main function is that you help big firms deal with things like risk and understanding the financial risk within the business and ensuring that the right measures and structures are in place to manage those risks. Um, Probably the most common application, Felipe, would be in insurance. So to ensure that the levels of reserves, the premium levels, all those things are in balance so that if there is an increase in claims or a change in expectation, that those things can be well managed and that insurers can meet their financial obligations. In South Africa, the role or the actuarial profession is a bit broader. And that might be just because it's seen as a bit of a jack of all trades in that environment. So there's a lot more focus on business. So it's a bit more of an entrepreneurial role, actually, which is interesting. And you'll have oftentimes leaders of large businesses are actuaries or actuarially trained. So, for example, the founder of Discovery Health, which some people might have heard of in South Africa, that are now, I think, one of the most well distributed companies internationally in terms of health services. That person's an actuary in terms of their original training. So it is a bit more entrepreneurial in that sense. And that's probably where we find ourselves in the Australian market as well. We tend to, rather than compete, work with a lot of the local actuarial firms. And then we try and provide services that are a bit more niche, a bit more cutting edge in terms of integrating AI, doing things that are a bit more on the edge of projecting into the future in terms of health and life. So it's a bit different to kind of your traditional actuarial role.
yeah, interesting, man. Actually, yesterday I got a call from that company, Health Discover. Yeah,
Oh yeah,
asking me what. Yeah, yeah, weird. Yeah, synchronicities.
yeah.
So apparently, to become an actuary, you have to be very, very smart, right? So what led you to pursue?
Yeah.
That's what someone told me.
I'm just laughing because I always joke and say I came in as it's a it. I'll tell you the story of kind of how I came to be an actuary. It
Yeah.
was not something that kind of I chose. It was something that I didn't know what I wanted to be. And so maybe it would have been better if I was completely invested in maths as much as I should have been. But it was a bit of a journey going from law to medicine to a whole bunch of different things and finally landing on actuarial science. That's just why I have a giggle.
Cool. Yeah, man. It's well, you require a lot of knowledge for that. I mean, it's
That's right.
intense. Yeah.
It is
What
like the
was your main?
qualification. And
Yeah.
sorry, go for it.
Go ahead.
Oh no, that's actually an interesting point. So one of the criticisms that the faculty, which is the main body through which I qualified, which is a UK-based organisation, oftentimes have, is there's basically three layers of qualification. The first part is very technical; it's very book-based, it's very formulaic. Then there's a bit of application in between that, and then the last ones are pure application with a good dose of business acumen included in them. And so the challenge is that the folks that are really good at the technical aspects struggle with the later subjects because there's a fair amount of lateral thinking required. And so oftentimes you'll find people that are really good at the technical work that can't qualify as an actuary because the average qualification age, and I might be wrong here, is about 28 because you have to do a certain set of exams at university, and then there's a whole range of subjects you still have to write after completing your initial training. And so, Felipe, the question is, if does the qualification provide the correct sifting for what the profession needs? So ultimately, it's a bit of a what does the market need question, but there is a perspective in our firm, and we're fairly large, so we're touching as a group at about 120 people, of which many of them would be actuaries, or maybe just slightly lower than that. But it's a fair sample. And what we find is that there is this struggle for folks to qualify. Some folks are really, really good at the technical aspects of the work and are really good at technical aspects of, say, modeling and analysis, but they don't necessarily qualify. Sometimes that's because they don't want to, or because the latter subjects just don't suit them. And then you get the vice versa, where you get folks that struggle with the really rigorous technical subjects, but they do really well at your lateral thinking subjects later on, and maybe they're more suited to a business development process or role. So it is a bit of a push and pull in terms of what the kind of profession offers. There has been a bit of a change there. So what the profession has done is try to create streams where you can have turnoffs at an earlier date based on your acumen and what you want to do. So you can become, say, an associate of the profession. So there are these other options that you can pursue. But by and large, anybody that's gone through the training will have a very good understanding of the risk, of math, of stats, and they'll probably be able to fulfill any role in a business in that sense.
Yeah, amazing. What sort of challenges did you have to face to become or to accredited in Australia? Because basically you were an actuary in South Africa, right? So the transition to become an actuary in Australia has been probably there's some challenges there, right?
There is. It's a little bit different for me. I've always been a member of the UK organisation, the Faculty and Institute of Actuaries,
Okay.
which is a little bit like the grandfather organisation. So most of the other bodies in the other countries sprouted off from that organisation. So the accreditation wasn't really a problem in that sense. It's a direct accreditation. If you're a fellow, which is your kind of top level qualification in the UK, then you are a fellow here as well. There's some things related to just working with a local actuary for a little while, but by and large, the accreditation isn't an issue. It's a fairly well-traveled qualification. The only exclusion is America. And so, I mean, as the Americans are, their qualification is slightly less rigorous than the UK organization. They've got 2 or 3 less exams to do. And so the UK organization said, well, they're not going to recognize the American fellows part for part. They have to complete those additional subjects. And then the American organization said, well, if you're not going to accredit our actuaries, we're not going to accredit your actuaries. So it's a bit of an arms race, a little bit like the Cold War in terms of being a little bit standoffish. But by and large, if you're an actuary based on your qualification in Australia, you can travel to the UK and work there and vice versa. So it really is a well-traveled international organization or international qualification in that sense.
Okay. And in terms of legislations, do you see that there's some differences between South Africa or UK and Australia?
Oh, very much. Yeah. No, that's a big thing. The biggest change and difference there is probably related to data security. It's not that it's that much different, but each country has got their own prerogative in terms of how you handle data. So as an actuary, you always work with data. In some countries, we've got access to really sensitive data, so we have to be very careful in terms of how we handle and manage that. And, you have to just always ensure that you do what the country requires in which area you operate. So we do lots of work in not only Australia, but also in Africa. We've done work in the UK. So each one of those have got different things that you need to look at. So for our environment here, the Australian privacy principles are the main things we have to abide by, as well as all the aspects of the Privacy Act and the specific PHI, which is the private health insurance regulations. But, that's things that you just have to be sure that you do the right thing. And that's only one of the big changes in terms of moving from a small to a big firm. You can't cut corners and things like data security, especially in our environment. Like, you have to make sure that everything is on par, that you're ahead of the curve. We always try and be proactive in terms of that. So we always try and chase and be ahead of what's required in terms of the legislation, just for our own data security as well as securing the data for our clients. Because we do hold their data as a custodian. It never becomes our data, it's always their data. So we always have that mindset of having to protect their interests on their behalf.
Yeah, interesting. For your consulting business, what's your target market and how do you promote your business? Because it's not a retail or, it's not even a corporation.
It's B2B, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, B2B.
And it's interesting because there's a couple of big differences business culture wise. That's probably the biggest difference between Australia and South Africa. I mean, culture wise, meaning going out, spending time on the lake, being on the water, getting together with friends, that's very similar as all of your South African friends have said. Business culture wise, it is night and day different. So the South African business culture is very, I think we always try and imitate New York's business style. So it's very cutthroat, to the point. If we were having a business meeting, I would have to start talking business within the first 20 seconds, or, you're going to get kind of pulled to the side and say, you got to start talking business. We're not here to waste money. Where the Australian business side is much more relational. It's much more based on, I think, the overall quality of what you bring to the table, rather than say just the price or just the offering. It's about a bit of a bigger picture. And I think the reason why is because it's more of an established market. We had a similar experience in the UK. There are lots of quality consultancies and there's lots of quality resources in the country. So you can have a bit of a view and say, who do I want to work with and walk a road with, rather than say, who's going to give me the best single price for the offering. So starting in this market was hard in that sense, because you had to move into that environment that had those entrenched and well-established relationships. We've got great competition in the market, and I'm saying great in the sense of quality. The value and quality of the other actuarial firms that consult in our market is really high, which is always a good thing because it pushes us to be better, and hopefully we push them to be better as well. And it's not adversarial. So it's a place where you have to come in and say, and our perspective from the start was, the Australian market doesn't need us. Whether or not Insight were to come to Australia and be here, the Australian market would have been fine 5-10 years later. You have to come with the mindset that you are offering something that's going to make that better, and that you are coming here to serve in terms of serving the market, helping the market be better, and then just actually do quality work. So that's the mindset that we entered the market with. And that did give us a bit of a different slant, right? Because the way you would approach the market from a consulting engagement is different. So it's not, we weren't chasing every single opportunity to be cutthroat, or to just, skimp on price, for example. And it's not that we didn't chase, we chased very hard, but we did it very strategically. We looked at markets where we would have a big impact, markets where we could create a lasting relationship with the clients. And by and large, we still have all of our original clients that we started the journey with. Many of those clients have moved on to become more than just a client, almost a partner in terms of doing business together. And we've always strove to say, well, if we're doing business with you, you're helping us in terms of our business grow, but what can we do to help your business grow? So it's, whereas lots of consulting firms, often there's the old adage that a consulting firm will tell you what question they want you to ask so they can give you the solution which they've already developed. We really try and stay away from that. So we really try and say, even if it's not the right piece of work for us to do, what should this client be doing? And, we've in that actually said to clients, we are not the right consulting firm to do this for you. You're actually wanting or needing this. And what we found is just that openness and honesty really breeds credibility for us. And so it's been a strategic growth, Felipe, in terms of that. And look, it's been a fun journey. Like, my perspective of the Australian market is that folks will give you the time of day, so they'll have a cup of coffee, but you have to be willing to go out there and spend a year, 6 months, or potentially more, just getting to know someone and having them get to know your business. I remember one of the first folks we started engaging with always said to us, they're very interested. This looks really amazing, but they want to be sure we're going to be around in 3 years' time. So they'll wait until like 2.5 years later, and lo and behold, that we eventually did do business with them. But, that was their perspective, that they want to make sure it's going to be a lasting thing.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, interesting, because my personal experience is similar, and apparently, Anyways, the market here at least in Newcastle, it's a very much a relationship market. So a lot of people here grow together. They went to similar schools, similar universities.
That's right.
They know each other for someone else. So basically, you have to create that relationship, build that trust, before offering anything.
That's
and
right.
that has been my journey and my challenge as well.
So what do you do from a consulting side, Felipe?
So basically, I am a strategic social marketing. So this is
Oh,
marketing
wow.
basically
Okay.
used. Yeah, yeah. It's marketing that focus on social good, the greater good. So basically, I love to promote programs, so create programs, or develop programs that are related with sustainable development goals, for example, or mental health. That the other day. I basically I consider myself a change agent. I want to push the envelope.
That's
Basically
pretty cool.
try to push. Yeah, 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 yeah. I wanna I wanna create an impact. So that's my mission. That's the mission of my
Yeah.
business. I am a one person business at the moment, so I'm
We've
just by
all been there.
myself. Yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's
But
it's funny. I always sorry, go for it.
no, no, go for it.
I always think like I remember when I started with Insight, which was back then was Lighthouse Consulting. And, well, there was a couple of firms that merged to form Insight, but one of the original partners in the business, I started working for him, and he hired me, and we literally sat in his basement and worked when it was just a one man show, or like a one and a half man show at that stage, with me being half there. But it's such a fun time in a business, and I always think back that it's a good time to remember. I can also remember our first couple of just time, couple of months and even a couple of years in Australia being a one man show. It's a unique challenge and perspective to go out and do something and make it happen. It's a fun period. It's something that I think few people enjoy in the moment as much as they should.
Yeah, yeah. Look, it can be fun. It can be challenging. In my case, has been really it's a long term vision. So it hasn't. I'm not. I don't wanna an instant success. I just wanna
Yeah,
create a long term impact. And look, to be honest, sometimes it's hard. People misunderstand what you're trying to do or misjudge what you're trying to do. I just wanna make a shift in some little things, and yeah. Look, I mean, it's fun. It's fun. It's not fun when you have to provide for your family.
yeah.
Fortunately, that's not. Yeah, yeah, I mean, yeah. Fortunately, that's not my case at the moment. But yeah, it's something that I'm passionate about. Sustainability, sustainable development goals, and health, education, all those kind of things.
That's awesome. I
And I
think
think
there's
your business, yeah, I think your
no, no.
business
I just
as
want to
well.
say
It's pretty much focused on values, right?
that's right. That's right. So we very much push um, into areas where we think we can make a difference. So we're also very health focused. But I was just saying, I think where you're focusing as well is something that is definitely needed in the market in society. Like I think there's a lot happening in our market on the development side, on the tech side, on cool things that are being built. But then there's kind of oftentimes a bit of a disjoint between what's actually happening out there in the real world. And the real world being that there are different real worlds in Australia. Rural Australia, where folks, are farmers, are living in communities that are very close knit, that are different in terms of some of the constructs there to say large urban areas. You have to communicate to those folks differently, but they have got the same kind of traditional needs. So I think there's something like that, where you can do some really deep dive into what are the aspects that we can use to connect and meet those folks, like what you're doing. I think that's amazing. That's something that's sorely needed in our market.
Yeah, yeah. Look, sometimes in my experience, it's more like an organic movement sort of thing. So basically, what I'm trying to, or what I've been trying to do, is to push from the ground up instead of push from the up down. So
Yeah, that
basically,
makes
just
sense.
trying to create conscience within the
Yeah,
community about some needs, some things that we need to change, and trying to push from the ground, like a grassroots thing. So it's fun. I mean, I like it. Sometimes you have to be a little bit provoking, a little bit break a little bit of the social rules, but in good in pursuing the good a good end at the end, a good outcome at the end.
Yeah, yeah, that's right.
So
That's right.
yeah, do you Daniel? Do you collaborate with business in the region?
Oh, yeah, we do. Well, we collaborate quite widely, not specifically. Uh, we're trying to be an influence or a force for good in terms of that across across the country. So it's not that we, for example, would focus purely on the Hunter or Newcastle. We've got folks that sit in Melbourne, we've got folks in Sydney, so it's a bit of a spread out team. But we definitely have a collaborative approach to the way we do business, Felipe. So we are going to, in the future, potentially look to doing some collaborations in certain areas. So, for example, we've done collaborations with clients in certain regional areas, especially some of the more rural areas in New South Wales that have got mine-focused, participants. So, say, Orange areas like that. So, we've done a couple of those. But it's not that we are doing a specific collaboration in Newcastle, for example.
Yeah, yeah. But
But maybe that's a
what's
good
your
idea.
target
That's
market,
something
rather?
you could start looking into. Sorry, just say again.
Yeah. What's your target market?
So we at the moment we've got a B2B focus specifically on the healthcare space. So I'd segment our targets into um, uh, the PHI insurance market, which we're working very closely with organizations such as the Australian Health Service Alliance. And then we also have prospects or folks we're working with on the direct services market. So those are folks that don't necessarily provide healthcare services like doctors and hospitals, but they provide additional service to those organizations. And that could be someone that provides a preventative mental health program. Got a number of platforms that work in that space. And then ultimately what we are moving into is having a service offering that brings these different stakeholders together. And maybe I'll share a bit of our philosophy in terms of the way we think of business. So the way that we see healthcare is that good healthcare, in terms of good outcomes, is a team sport. That's something that's produced by an engaged and willing patient, a doctor or hospital that's doing their best, and most of them are, and then a good funder as well. You need those three aspects to work together to have a good outcome for the patient. And so what we love to do is to use data and create platforms and tools for those different stakeholders in the market, be that the patient, be it the doctor, be it the funder, be it the regulator, to improve their part of that patient's journey. Whether that's improving the actual services they give to patients, whether it's improving the actual understanding of the patient, of their procedure and recovery. So that's kind of the way we see business in terms of the target market. So it's not really saying that we want to target this group of individuals or this group of companies. The key question that we ask from a philosophy is, does this client fit into that continuum? Is it going to be something where we'd be able to improve the outcomes for the patient? And does it meet our overarching goal of saying we want to build a better health system? That's our kind of guiding framework. And Felipe, the reason why we have that is there's so much opportunity in this country. You could really, I mean, if you've got an open mind, there really is no end to the volume of opportunities you can pursue. And you have to then, in our perspective, and my personal views, you have to decide what are you going to be proud of when you retire one day. Is it and financial gain can't be your target there, because you could win the lotto tomorrow. Then what are you going to do then? Be satisfied. You have to decide, like, what is it that you want to do in terms of not really a legacy, but something that you've maybe similar to what you've said, like how do you want to improve the market, or what do you want to do from a long-term perspective. And so we generally try and target organizations that fit into those goals for the company and for the firm.
Yeah, great. Yeah, no, that's great. And Daniel, look, this is a very dynamic and fast market at the moment. How do you stay updated on the latest trends and developments in your field, in insurance or finance or health industry?
Yeah. So I think it's about finding the right people. So we always look for the quirky actuaries. I say that with respect and with a good thing. So we like guys that are a little bit different, that are kind of generally key characteristics for us is curiosity, is a bit of doggedness in terms of when they don't understand something, and a bit of maybe even that obsessive, almost that ADHD obsessiveness that you can hyper focus, in terms of what you want to look at. And the reason why I say that is the key to staying on top is your people. We have to have people that are engaged, because even if it was just you and I, there's only so much that the two of us can do. And we've got kids, we've got families, we want to be on the lake every now and again. So you're not going to be able to keep up with everybody that's doing everything. So it's about finding people that are going to be the right folks for you to push, and then it's just giving them freedom in that regard. We love trying stuff. We'll go to clients and tell them, for example, when the first ChatGPTs came about, we were right there speaking to clients, and we were saying to our folks, we want to tell clients about this. We have to push this. This is where the market's going. What can we do? And we were very open with clients to say, let's learn about this together. Let's try it together. So we've always kind of had that entrepreneurial spirit flow through the company, if you will, which I think is really important for staying on top of things. Because if you don't do that, so maybe let's take a different trance here. To be able to be successful in a new innovation, let's say there's some new piece of tech that develops a new way of visualizing data, you have to have someone that's really invested in that in the firm. You have to have someone that's excited about that. So we provide our staff with a lot of freedom in that regard and tell them, what do you want to focus on? And then if you get the right kind of staff, they'll push you in the right direction of where you need to go. And then you can marry that up with what's the best solution for your clients within that. Because as much as the market develops quickly, generally the way that healthcare is delivered is a slower flow, right? That's like an oil that doesn't flow as fast as the kind of water of the market. So it kind of follows it in a slower trend. So you can kind of set that and guide that in some sense.
That's great and interesting, man. Can you share an example of a particular interesting project that you work on?
Yeah, sure. So we do a lot of work regarding the future risk of patients. So in healthcare, the key thing that we need to do in a society such as ours, where you have multiple factors that are influencing the burden of disease, you've got multiple comorbidities, you've got the rise of obesity, mental health becoming more of an issue. The kind of key saving grace or thing that I think there's going to be a lot of investment in is the idea that you could potentially prevent some of that. Not all of it, some of it, or stem the tide at least. And the way to do that is through preventative interventions. That's about getting in early enough when you see someone is starting to struggle with mental health, or someone is starting to struggle with their health in general, to give them the tools to move that needle. And so the key question for lots of folks on this side of the market is, well, who should we be talking to? And so what we're doing is using some really interesting cutting edge AI and data analytics to analyze data and advise folks about who are the key target individuals that are in the right sphere of the risk continuum, to say these are the folks you should be focusing on. That means that you have to find someone that isn't too sick or too far advanced in their health journey, but also that is willing and able to accept an intervention, and you have to help them with the right intervention. So we don't deliver the intervention, we do that analytics piece to say, this is the people you should be talking to, this is what you should be talking to them about, and this is the potential value of talking to them in an effective manner. And that could be reductions in hospital claims, it could be reductions in healthcare utilization, and that really, in our mind, is effective help, because that doesn't mean that you prevent someone from going to hospital. It means you prevent them from needing to go to hospital. So that's really what we're passionate about. And in that, we try and really come at that from multiple angles. We use AI, we use a range of just normal statistical modeling. We use a range of behavioral economic models. We partner with other companies that do that to learn as much as we can and work with them. So there really is this multi-pronged approach, Felipe, to really drive that vision. And that's really one of the areas that we've spent most of our time R&Ding and focusing. So we'd say to someone in the firm that this is the problem. We need to solve this problem. We need to know which individuals between the ages of 40 and 60 are at risk of developing a mental health condition, but that don't have one yet. Find those individuals in the data for us. And then we just, give them time, and we give them data, and we give them resource, and then they can go and figure that out. And I think that's quite unique in
That's
terms of,
fascinating.
yes, because it's a little bit like almost a research unit in a kind of consulting firm, which is very unique. Consulting firms generally do what the client wants, and there's a project, and you do, and it finishes, and you move on to the next one. We're really trying to build solutions. So it is a bit of push and pull. We do a lot of reinvestment, because you have to take that person out of consulting rotation for that period, right? You have to say to them, you've got freedom to spend the next 3 months working just on this if you want to. And, that means if we have to send them somewhere to learn, we'll do that. So that's kind of the way we approach that and do that.
Yeah, fascinating, man. Fascinating. So, can you tell me a little bit more, going back to the point of getting into data, like personal data? Can we discuss the importance of ethics in the field of in your field?
Yeah,
So,
it's very
how
important.
important is that? Yeah, yeah.
Oh, extremely important. So, my philosophy around data, specifically data, like healthcare data, and in South Africa specifically, we've got access to amazing data. We get wearable data. So if you've got a Garmin like this that tracks your sleep, your activity, we can get access to that. We've got access to your credit data, your banking data, your healthcare data, but with your permission. And with the idea that we would use that data to give you usable information back. Because ultimately, data is just data. And I think one of the things that we forget in this environment is that there's reams of data out there. Like if I look, for example, at all of the data that this gives me, it gives me my heart rate every single second of the day. But that doesn't really mean anything to me as an individual if it's not trended, if it doesn't give me insights on that data. And so, like, excuse the pun, but that's what we try and do with data. And that's what we believe is the function of a good data analytics platform or company or consultancy or team. You have to produce value out of the data. And so ethically, if you're giving me access to your data, it's almost a use it or lose it perspective. If I don't use that data to improve someone's life, or by extension, the potential for your life to be improved, then it becomes a question of whether or not I should even have that data. So ethically, we believe that if you have data, you have to use it for the greater good of society, and that could be based on the ability to proactively intervene, the ability to effectively predict, and ultimately for the improvement of the healthcare system, if it's healthcare data. And I do think, regulatorily, we're moving in that space as well, Felipe. There's lots of regulations coming in that say you only can get access to the data that you need to have, and then you have to prove why do you need it, and you have to prove if you need it, what are you doing with that data that's valuable. So you can't just become a data mining entity, if you will, for the sake of mining data. Because ultimately, my data belongs to me. Like, I can see you've got an iPhone yeah. So that data that you're producing, you purchased that machine, right? And you paid for it, and it's producing data. And you're producing that, by actively wearing it, by engaging it, so that data belongs to you. There has to be some value that's attributable to you. Maybe in a couple of years' time, that'll be a commercial value. You might be able to sell your data individually to, a research firm for 2 cents per month. And, maybe there's some ways that organizations are doing that already by telling you, oh, we'll give you the watch for free. But there is this idea that if you have data, you have an ethical push, drive, responsibility to use it in an appropriate way that benefits other people.
And in that sense, you may need to collaborate at some stage with people who can, develop the story of the data, in to tell it to the other people, the customers or the clients. But what concerns me a little bit with that, but this is a personal concern. Basically, it's just I get a little bit paranoid with these things sometimes.
Yeah.
With technology, it's not that I don't have anything to hide, but sometimes I just say something, and next time I have an ad for the same thing that I was talking about. I was like,
Yeah.
you know what? I'm blocking all the speakers and stuff, but it's not the idea, and I want to be able to use it, but it's getting a little bit intrusive in my view, basically.
Oh, I agree 100% with you. I mean, if I think very few people would read the privacy policies. Like if you read the privacy policy of, say, TikTok or lots of the other social media platforms, the level of access you grant when you kind of, install some of those apps is absolutely insane. I mean, following keystrokes or whatever. So, no, I think that speaks exactly to the point. There's tons of data and you're producing data the whole time, whether it's through your speech, through your activity, where you go, your spending habits. And lots of organizations are using that for their benefit or for the ability to capture the data, process it and sell it on to the next organization, be that a large pharma firm or, not that pharma is a bad thing, but just, any organization that might use that for marketing. I think that is a big, big risk in terms of, the fact that the data is there. I think the question would be, what would be interesting to me is to find out, let's say that's happening, right? I mean, your watch is listening to us right now, your phone, whatever, to actually switch that off is really hard. But what would value look like to you? Like, what would make that okay for you in terms of it being valuable enough to say, so for example, I know my wife loves it when her phone prompts her with something she was talking about. If she's talking about a new dress that she's thinking about, or shoes, all of a sudden, it's done the work for her. Here's the shoes that she wants to buy. There we go. So it's a bit of give and take, right?
Yeah. True. Daniel, can you see any emerging areas or trends in your field that are particularly interesting for you?
Oh, definitely. So the things we're excited about that I think are going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to have to deal with
Yeah.
the societal changes in Australia in a different way, right? So it's the structures that have been set up to, say, fund healthcare in this country have been working really well, relatively well for a number of years. But the changes in the way that society is playing out in the future are going to impact that. What I mean by that is the mix between people that are young and old, people that are working and not working, the kinds of diseases and things we're seeing in a younger population with the rise of mental health and obesity. That means that the proportion of people that are funding healthcare, be that through taxes or through other contributions, are becoming smaller and smaller as a relative proportion. And that means we're going to have to change the way that works. And like a good way to think of that is, for example, in France, a couple of, I think last year when they had to change the retirement age, that's a normal measure that an actuary would work out and say, yeah, we don't have enough people working anymore. Because of the advances in healthcare and lifestyle, we're now living longer. So now we need to change the social contract between young and old because there's more people that are old that are living longer. So that is going to create all kinds of fascinating, interesting challenges for people in that space, be that the health space, the retirement space, even just our own ability to say we know what we need when we retire. Do we really? Like, how old are we going to become? By the time we reach our 80s, 90s, potentially hundreds, it is super going to be enough to take care of us. You don't really know because of the way that healthcare is changing. Everybody thinks that, as healthcare changes, we might be able to live to 110, 115. What's that going to look like financially? You could be that we have 3 generations that are eligible for a retirement home. That's going to be, an interesting prospect for us. So there's going to be a ton of very interesting societal changes to deal with there. That's a big focus for us. Healthcare is going to change as well, just in the ability of intervening and talking to people in a way that's unique to them. You've got the rise of personal healthcare, genomic testing. There's so many cool things happening in the healthcare space, Felipe, that I think there's going to be a number of interesting things that we just haven't thought of yet that are going to become relevant for us in our lifetime as well as our kids. And then in the short term, I think there's going to be a big focus on prevention and active intervention. If you and I both have, say, mild depression, anxiety, stress, or obesity, There's been a traditional narrative how to deal with that. But there are folks that are really pushing the envelope there and are doing good work in terms of doing it differently. And I think that is so interesting because the moment you find something that's different and works, that's going to change that game significantly. So I think all of those things are going to be different in 5-10 years' time. And that's going to mean we've got different challenges going forward and different opportunities for that regard. Yeah.
Yeah, amazing. Daniel, thank you so much for your time, man. This has been really interesting for me. One more questions. Are you familiarized with ESG, environment, social, and governance
A little bit, yeah.
Laws? Yeah. Do you work in that field, or do you have any project on that field?
Not at the moment, no. It's not something we're
Yeah,
focused on
yeah.
at the moment, Felipe.
Yeah, okay. No, because I think that there is a relation, or could be a correlation there with that field that is changing rapidly in Australia, and I wanted to know your opinion. But that's fine.
But
Mate,
tell me a bit
thank you
more
so
about that.
much for
So,
your
so
time.
what
And
is your perspective on that?
in ESG, so basically the law is it's changing. There's more requirements at the moment. They're very strict. I am still getting into it. I'm just trying to figure it out um, how we can add value to, or incentivize business to take the environmental and social and governance framework from the government, how they can incorporate it to their businesses with some sort of incentive, how we can basically push a little bit, not just large businesses but also small and medium-sized businesses. How we can customize ESG to small to medium businesses and add value to it. Yeah, that's basically what I am trying to figure it out now. But I'm
Interesting.
just researching at the moment. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, that's going to be quite interesting. I think it's going to be a challenge for many countries that are moving into the space with government regulations coming in, and then having to not force but entice smaller businesses that are really kind of just on the edge to do the right thing, because that's grassroots. Where I think a lot of the business in Australia still is. You've got lots of opportunity for small regional businesses. So if you want to make a change, you're going to have to get them on board.
Yeah. So basically, what I'm trying to do is to create a model to nudge those businesses,
Okay.
basically to attract them, and that's what we're trying to do with Michelle Crawford and Thrive Stars as well.
Okay, awesome.
So
Okay, that's very
yeah,
interesting.
cool. Thank you so much for your time, Daniel. Thank you for your all your knowledge and experience. This has been really valuable. And yeah, I hope we can have a chat another time and meet personally probably at some stage.
That sounds great.
So
Yeah,
this
you're,
has
you're based in
been
Coal
really
Point,
great.
right?
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
I'm
Okay,
just
awesome.
around the
Yeah, so
corner.
we're just across the water. That's great. Yeah, looking forward.
And you're in Ball Point, right?
That's right. Yeah, just across from you. Yeah.
Yeah. Great. Thank you so much, Daniel. All the best, and I'll see you soon.
Thanks, Felipe. Thanks. Have a great day, and we'll chat again soon.
You too. Thank you.
Thanks. Cheers.
Give me 1 second, Daniel. Give me 1 second
No
because
worries.
it has to upload completely on your
I see
side
the
and
75
on my
uploaded.
side.
Yeah,
So I'm just
that's all
gonna,
good.
yeah.
So
So
where
I'm
do you
just
publish
gonna
this, Felipe?
stop.